In the mythical dawn of the Old World, the dwarves tell a story of their birth. They say when the gods still walked the earth, they were hewn from living rock of the mountains. They were the Dawi, and their destiny was to be one of unmatched glory and unimagined sorrow. They would build the glorious empire that spanned the mountains, a true bastion of strength and honor. This is the story of their golden age and the great betrayal that shattered them and their endless war for survival. This is the history of the dwarves. According to the dwarves' own legends, they were the first among the Old World's children, given life by their divine creators, the ancient gods. From the stone heart of the mountains, three figures emerged to guide them. Grugni, the god of mining and the master of the forge. Valea, the protector of the hold, the home, and the fine art of brewing. And Grimnir, the fearless, the warrior god who would teach them how to fight. Grugni gave them their ingenuity, teaching them to smelt iron, carve runes of power, and see the mountains not as a wall, but as a home. Valea established their culture, weaving protective runes that would guard their halls and teach them the unifying power of good ale. And Grimnir, clad in iron, taught them the art of war, leading them against the great beasts of the world. One of the most famous legendary feats being the slaying of the father of dragons, or Mskaladrak. Guided by these living gods, the Dawi migrated north, following the rich veins of ore along the great spine at the World's Edge Mountains. Where they found riches, they delved deep, carving out immense fortress cities called Carracks. These Carracks, linked by vast networks of underground highways known as the Underway, formed a continent-spanning empire, the Carrack Angkor, the Everlasting Realm. Their halls gleamed with gold and gromril, and their wealth became the envy of the world. It was in this era that they met the elves. An unfriendly friendship bloomed, one built on mutual respect, and, more importantly, trade. The first ever High King, Snorri Whitebeard, even allied with the elven prince Malekith to purge the last remnants of chaos from the world. For a time, it seemed like the age of peace and prosperity had dawned. The dwarves were undisputed masters of the mountains, their allies were masters of the sea, and their combined strength was absolute. This was their golden age, but of course it wouldn't last. Trust, especially between proud ancient races, is a fragile thing. For the dwarves and the elves, it was shattered by a vile act of treachery. In the year minus 2005, in the imperial calendar, dwarf merchants were ambushed and murdered. The culprits were dark elves, a twisted kin of the high elves, but they massacred as their noble cousins, planting false evidence to sow chaos. The seed of mistrust had been sown. The dwarf high king, Gromix Starbreaker, demanded compensation from the Phoenix King of the High Elves, Calidor II. But Calidor II, arrogant and lacking his father's wisdom, refused, essentially calling the dwarves beggars. This was a staggering insult. For dwarves, a race built on honor, words have weight. But the elves' next act would ignite the fire that would consume generations. According to the Dwarven Annals, Calidor II had the dwarf ambassadors seized and their beards, the symbol of dwarf pride, honor, and their entire life's journey, forcibly shaved off before sending them home. For a dwarf, this is an insult that can only be answered in blood. This was a wrong that could never be forgiven, and that was the grudge of the ages. To understand what happened next, you have to understand the Dawi's soul. The heart of their culture is the Damazon Chrome, the great book of grudges. Under the authority of the High King, this sacred tome recorded every wrong, every insult, and every injury ever done to the dwarven race, written in the blood of the High Kings themselves. A grudge entered into the Damaz Kron is an eternal debt that must be settled. There is no forgiveness, no forgetting. Only vengeance paid in treasure or in blood can strike a grudge from the book. Their shaving of their ambassadors wasn't an insult. It was a grudge so deep it would define their people forever. And so began the War of the Beard, or as the dwarves call it, the War of Vengeance. For over 4 centuries, the old world burned. Dwarves marched from their mountain halls, their armored throngs pouring into elven colonies, which were systematically destroyed. The elves fought back with all their martial skill and magic might. It was a clash of titans that devastated both civilizations. The war would end when King Calidor II was personally slain by Gotek Starbreaker, who claimed the Phoenix Crown as a token of vengeance. The elves, forced to retreat to their island of Uthwan to face the Dark Elf invasion, abandoned the old world entirely. Dwarves had won, but the cost was catastrophic, leaving both empires weakened and vulnerable. I have become an energy drink fiend over the last decade or so. I've struggled to find one that I really like. But with my sponsor, Dubby, that all changed almost overnight. I was able to find energy drinks I like the Japanese yuzu flavor and Japanese soda and all that fun stuff, as well as really cool drinkware. Like, I've become a fan of Freerin lately, and they did just collab with them for some really cool bottles and things like that, as well as cool merch. So if you want to try out a clean, healthy energy drink that has a lot less negative effects than anything else, the only thing you're going to get from W is a caffeine boost, unlike a lot of the other energy drinks where you're going to be feeling sick, or sometimes they just taste horrible, and you want to look cool drinking it, just like I do. Check out w.gg and use code WARGAME, which you're going to pull up right here, for 10% off. w.gg, code WARGAME. If you enter that code, you'll get 10% off your first order, as well as any subsequent orders as well. And that goes to help sponsor the channel today, and have to give another shout out to my longest sponsor, W, once again. So, let me get some more energy, and we'll get back to the video. The War of Vengeance had bled Karak-Ankor, but the greatest tragedies were yet to come. A series of cataclysmic earthquakes rocked the World's Edge Mountains, an event that dwarves grimly called the Time of Woe. Volcanoes erupted, entire holds were swallowed by the earth, and the magnificent underway, the very arteries of the Empire, was shattered, cutting the Karaks from one another. Weakened and isolated, the dwarves were now vulnerable, and its power vacuum swarmed with endless green tide. Orcs and goblins and other vile creatures, driven from their own subterranean lairs by the quakes, poured into the ruins of the dwarf realm. This was the start of the Goblin Wars, one of the brutal, unending struggles for survival that had defined the dwarves ever since. One by one, the great holds began to fall in long, tragic sequences. Karak-Ankor was overrun by night goblins and renamed Red Eye Mountain. Rich mining settlements like Mount Gunbad and Mount Silverspear were lost. But the most devastating loss, the one that echoes as a lament in every dwarven hall, the fall of Karak Eight Peaks. Once the jewel of the southern realm, it was besieged from below by skaven ratmen and from above by goblins. The fighting was bitter and lasted for ages, but the hold was ultimately lost, its name becoming a byword for tragedy. The once glorious Karak-Ankor was shrinking. The Golden Age was now a distant, painful memory, replaced by a grim war fought in the dark. The numbers dwindled, their great halls grew quiet, their hearts filled with bitterness of 1,000 new grudges. They were a people on the brink, fighting a defensive war against a world that seemed determined to swallow them whole. Just as darkness threatened to consume them, a new light appeared. Humanity, once a collection of scattered tribes, was on the rise, led by a great chieftain named Sigmar. They were forging a new nation. The legendary alliance began by chance. The dwarf high king Kurag Ironbeard was captured by orcs, only to be rescued by a young warrior, Sigmar. In gratitude, Kurag gifted Sigmar with a mighty dwarf-forged hammer, Galmaraz, the Skull Splitter. This act forged a bond of friendship between the two leaders and their people. This bond was soon tested in the fires of war. A massive greenskinned horde gathered, threatening to extinguish the new tribes of man and overrun the dwarf holds. High King Kurag Ironbeard and Sigmar agreed to face the threat together. At a narrow pass flanked by walls of black volcanic glass, known as Blackfire Pass, the alliance of men and dwarves made their stand. The battle was legendary. The disciplined shield walls of the dwarves held firm against the green tide, while human tribesmen fought with ferocity that earned the dwarves' respect. Together they won a crushing victory that checked the greenskin menace for generations, and secured the founding of Sigmar's new empire. The alliance was solidified. In recognition of their valor, dwarf runesmiths forged 12 magical swords, the Rune Fangs, one for each of the great tribe leaders who fought that day. The Silver Age marked a turning point. The dwarves were no longer entirely alone. While it didn't reverse their long decline, the alliance with mankind helped them endure, and they would fight side by side again centuries later in the Great War against Chaos. And that brings us to the dwarves today. They're a proud, declining race. Their numbers are a fraction of what once was. Their empire is a patchwork of isolated mountain strongholds. They're a people defined by loss and memory, forever looking back at the golden age they can no longer reclaim. They are stout, proud, and as stubborn as the mountains they call home. They are master artisans, their work imbued with powerful runes, a craft no other race can replicate. They are quick to anger and impossibly slow to forgive. For every wrong is meticulously recorded in the Great Book of Grudges. Under their current High King, Thorgrim Grudgebearer, a new Age of Reckoning has been declared. Thorgrim is a king in the old mold, determined not just to hold the realm, but to reclaim the lost glories of the past. He actively leads his armies to settle ancient grudges and retake lost holds, lighting a fire in the hearts of Dowie that have not been seen in centuries. Theirs is a story of unmatched glory, profound tragedy, and an unyielding will to endure. Hewn from rock, their spirit is just as unbreakable. For they are Dowie, and the mountains remember. If you've enjoyed the history of the dwarves, be sure to strike the like button with the fury of a grudge being settled. Subscribe and ring the bell if you don't want to miss our next dive into the lore of the Old World. And head down to the comments and let us know which faction's history you want us to explore next. Until then, remember your oaths, and beware of elves bearing razors.